you could say bounties of creating the sky, creating the earth, growing crops, etc. He's now making mention of the bounty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed upon Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, which is in reality a bounty upon each and every single one of us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He reminds us of that time. Remember when your Lord said to the angels, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa, indeed I am going to make a deputy in the earth. Qalu, they said, Ataj'alu fiha man yufsidu fiha wa yasfiku ad-dima. Are you going to place within the earth a creation that will cause mischief and bloodshed? Wa nahnu nusabbihu bihamdika wa nuqaddisu lak, while we, the angels, we glorify you, we praise you, we worship you. Qala inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. Allah answers, indeed I know that which you do not know. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He makes mention of the story of Adam alayhi salatu wasalam and his creation in various different places of the Holy Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of it over here in approximately 1.5 pages, 1 page in Surah Al-Baqarah. It then comes again in Surah Al-A'raf. It then just came again last night, Surah Al-Hijr. It then comes again briefly in Surah Al-Kahf, and it comes again in the 23rd juz right before Surah Al-Zumar. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He makes mention of Adam alayhi salatu wasalam's story quite a few times. The most detailed would be in Surah Al-A'raf. One of the most detailed accounts of Adam alayhi salatu wasalam's story is in Surah Al-A'raf. Nonetheless, over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He makes mention of a different angle of the story. So this is before the entire creation of Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, before the issue that occurred with Iblis, before all of that. This is before it even happened. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He announces to the angels and He explains to them that I'm going to create a creation and I'm going to make this creation my khalifa, my deputy on earth. And they will continue to worship me and they will spread my word, and these teachings will be passed on from generation through generation through generation, right, until the end, until I decide that the time is up. Now immediately the angels, they say, Attaj'alu fiha man yufsidu fiha wa yasfiku ad-dima. That this creation that you're going to create, they're going to cause mischief and they're going to cause bloodshed. So the Mufassirun, they really dive deep into these discussions over here. But the first thing is, what was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's objective for telling the angels this? Was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seeking mashwara, seeking their advice? Was He consulting them? Was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala testing them? What was the motive here? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ask them? Right, so the Mufassirun, they explain that it can't be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeking mashwara, seeking consultation from them. Because mashwara, consultation, is for a person who lacks knowledge. You don't know what the best course of action would be, so therefore you get a few other heads together and then you consult one another. Or sometimes consultation, mashwara, happens when a person has, for example, joint partnership in something. So now both of you have an equal share in this, so you consult one another. How should we move forward in this, for example? He goes, neither one of these two things apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything. وَمَا تَسْقُطُ مِنْ وَرَقَةٍ إِلَّا يَعْلَمُهَا. Not a single leaf will fall except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. Nor does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have any partners in His kingdom. إِنِ الْحُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ. The kingdom only belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore it can't be this. The second thing would be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing them. Okay, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing them, which seems to be the correct interpretation over here, how are the malaika objecting? Right, this will be the second question now. Are the malaika objecting? When we read about the malaika elsewhere, right, لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. They never disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They never question Allah's authority. Why are they questioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's authority? So the Mufassirun, they explain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala questioning the malaika was because He wanted to solicit an answer. Otherwise He would have never told them. There was no point in telling them. Allah wanted to know So Allah gave them the ability of expressing their opinion here. So what is your opinion? Tell me, what do you guys think? Now the third question arises over here, that how do the malaika know that the creation that would be created would cause bloodshed, would cause mischief? So the Mufassirun, they explain this in two ways. Either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prior to this explained what Bani Adam, what the children of Adam would do, what their temperament would be like, right? How they would exist, right? How they would fight with one another. There would be disunity and then unity, right? And the constant throes of power. This is how Bani Adam would live. So it's because of this they knew. Or they were basing Bani Adam off of the jinn. Ibn Kathir, he makes mention al-Bidayah wa nihaya, that before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created mankind. Before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created mankind and sent mankind here, the jinn already inhabited the earth. And the same thing that we went through, they went through the same thing. Right? They also fought with one another, caused bloodshed. Right? Meaning the jinn also have emotions like we humans have emotions. Right? The jinns also have ikhtiyar, have choice of action, the way we human beings have choice of action. Right? They're just different in some angles, right, from us. Right? More powerful, live longer, right? All these different kinds of things. So the malaika already saw all of this play out once. So they're thinking, if it happened once with the jinn, you're now creating another makhluk, this makhluk probably even weaker than the jinn. If they did it, these guys will do it too. That's what they're assuming. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asking them these questions, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't really give them an answer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He asks the question, they give their opinion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't explain it on the spot. He just says, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. I know things that you don't know. He gives the authoritative answer. I know, and you just don't know. Right? So you guys are guessing. This is your opinion. I know all. So therefore I know what's going to happen. Meaning Allah, it's not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, na'udhu billah, is unaware of the fact that we're going to cause bloodshed. Allah knows that. Allah knows that. But Allah knows that underneath all of this, there will always be a group of believers. There will always be a group that will uphold the truth. And a group that will continue to preach the truth. Worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And that is okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is willing, right, for this to happen. Meaning, if the objective was to create a nation that was never going to err, we already had that. The malaika already existed. They don't make mistakes. They continue to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some malaika, their objective is to do sujood, they are always in sujood. Some malaika, their objective, right, is to do ruku, they're always in the ruku. Some malaika, their objective is to praise Allah verbally, they are always praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala verbally. Right? And there's no lack of malaika. But there's no lack of malaika. But we know the hadith that Al-Baytul Ma'mur, which sits above the Kaaba in the seven heavens. Every single day, 70,000 angels do tawaf around Baytul Ma'mur. And there's so many angels that never until the day of judgment will those 70,000 be ever given a second chance to do tawaf. That's it, they do it once. And you never get another chance. Right? We're fortunate enough that we can go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's house, the Kaaba, right, time in and time again. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take us all. Right, like this. So now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving the authoritative answer, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. I know things that you just don't know. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala demonstrates something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to demonstrate the reason for why He's creating Adam. And he's giving this demonstration. Why? Because He wants the malaika to accept the fact that there will be some of Bani Adam which are going to be superior to us. Some of Bani Adam which will be superior to us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He begins this process of testing. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches Adam the names of everything. ثُمَّ عَرَضَهُمْ عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ. And then He presented these same things to the angels. فَقَالَ. He said to the angels, أَنْبِئُونِي. Inform me بِأَسْمَاءِ هَؤُلَاءِ, of the names of these things, in kuntum sadiqeen, if you're truthful. if you're capable of doing so. قالوا, they said, Subhanak, glory be to you. La ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. We have no knowledge except of whatever you taught us. Innaka antal alimul hakim. Indeed, you're all wise and all knowing. Qala ya Adam. Allah then says, O Adam, Ambihum bi asma'ihim. Tell them, inform them of the names of these things. فَلَمَّا أَنْبَأَهُمْ بِأَسْمَائِهِمْ. So when Adam informed them of the names of these things, قَالَ أَلَمْ أَقُلْ لَكُمْ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ غَيْبَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Now Allah repeats himself, that didn't I not tell you that I know the hidden things within the heavens and the earth? وَعَلَمُ مَا تُبْدُونَ. And I know what you manifest, what you're showing, وَمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْتُمُونَ. And the things that you hide and the things that you conceal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides to show Adam alayhi salatu wasalam superiority over the malaika in a very unique way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows the superiority of Adam over the malaika through ilm, knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives Adam alayhi salatu wasalam a certain type of knowledge. The knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks over here, He refers to it as Allama Adam al-asma'a kullaha. He taught him the names of all things. He taught him the names of things. Now the names that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are teaching, right? Now the malaika, as we know from the story ahead, and we just read the verses, they're unable to give this information back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He asks them. But the malaika were right there. They were right there. Right? They could have cheated on the test. They could have listened in, and they could have given the answers. But we need to understand for a bit what exactly Allah taught Adam. What exactly He taught Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. He taught him the names of apparent things, yes. You know, okay, this is an apple, or this is an orange, and this is, okay, the names of apparent things. But then He also taught him the names of certain things that the malaika are unable to feel. Okay, this is what anger feels like. This is what hunger feels like. This is what thirst feels like. This is what it feels to be sad. Right? And these kinds of things. So yeah, even if the malaika might have been able to listen in on the names of some of these material objects, how would they know what hunger feels like? They don't feel hungry. How would they know what it feels like to be sleepy? How would they know what it feels like to be angry, to be sad, to be happy? They wouldn't know these things. So if Allah were to hypothetically make the malaika feel and say, okay, what is this called? They wouldn't be able to say, they're feeling it for the very first time. How would they be able to tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what that thing is called? Right? It's like a person goes to the doctor and you're having a symptom that you never felt before. You don't know how to describe it to the doctor. Right? You're unable to describe it to the doctor. You just say it hurts here when I do this. Right? You're not able to explain it any better. Because the malaika were unable to explain what they were feeling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they never felt it before. Right? This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching Adam. That these are the things, right? So the Mufassirun, they explain that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam the names of things, wa khawasiha, and the speciality of those things. That okay, you can teach someone, or you might be able to teach the malaika that this is an apple. But then if they taste it, how do they know what an apple tastes like? They don't eat. They don't eat. They don't sleep. Right? They don't do these things. So because they're unable to do these things, they're only able to do that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them the ability to do so. That's all they're able to do. Right? That's it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He teaches all of these things to Adam. He asks the malaika are unable to inform Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what these things are called. But they did the right thing. When they failed and they realized that Adam is superior to us in knowledge, they said, Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. They submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Glory be to you. We only know those things that you taught us. We don't know anything else. Innaka antal alimul hakim. Now here's the interesting thing. When it was turn for Adam to prove his superiority, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the malaika, tell me the names, He said, tell me the names. Ambi'uni. When now He's summoning Adam, He's saying, tell them what they're called. He's not saying, oh, tell me. He's saying, tell them. Meaning, prove to them that you know the names. Right? So now Adam is turning to the malaika and telling them, this is called this, and this is called this. This feeling is called this emotion is called this. Right? So now Allah's, this entire setup was just to show right, that insan, Bani Adam, right, could be superior to the malaika. The reason why I keep saying could be, right, is because we understand that al-insan is afdalul makhluqat, is the greatest of creations. But not always. Not always. Only those insan which adorn themselves with the teachings of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam could make themselves superior to some of the malaika. Right? Rather, the ulama, they explain that the elite, right? And I say elite over here, I'm talking about in terms of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The elite who are extremely close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the humans are superior to those who are elite from the angels. And the general, right, the general God-fearing human is superior to the general angels. Right? But can a person stand up and say that I am superior to Jibreel? Right? Again, are the Anbiya alayhim salawatu salam superior? Yeah. Right? But could we stand up and say this? There are some human beings that are so filthy. Jalaluddin as-Suyuti has a book wherein he says, I forget the first part of the name of the book, Faslu Khitab, fi tafdili al-kilabi ala kathir mimman labisa thiyab. In that whole book, he explains that not every single human is superior to every single angel. Rather, he says that there are some dogs that are superior to those that wear clothing, meaning to human beings. Fi tafdil al-kilab ala kathir mimman labisa thiyab. He goes that some human beings are so far gone that animals are better than them. Right? They live animalistic lives. He goes, would you say that those human beings are superior to the malaika? No, never. Right? Rather, animals are better than those human beings. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes Adam turn to the malaika and say, tell them what the names of these things are. Adam alayhi salatu wasalam then tells them the names of these things. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells the malaika once again, didn't I tell you I know the hidden things of the heavens and the earth? وَعَلَمُ مَا تُبْدُونَ وَمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْتُمُونَ. So we understand from here that the ilm, among all of the characteristics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose in order to show the superiority of Adam over the malaika, He chose ilm, knowledge. Right? Knowledge is one of the most powerful characteristics ever. Meaning this is the one characteristic that is capable of making a human being superior to the angels. Ilm, knowledge. Right? And then when we say ilm, we're not talking about mere information. We're talking about real ilm. Real ilm is ilm that is followed by amal, al-ilmun nafi', beneficial knowledge. Otherwise, the more a person amasses information without implementation, the more the proof of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists against this person. Right? The more a person learns, and they amass information without implementation, the deeper they're digging this hole, and the harder they'll fall. Al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, right, that the hujjah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the proof of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala against this person is greater than that of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's proof against the jahil, the one who's ignorant. A person who disobeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of ignorance, Allah may overlook many of the things that person does. But a person who amasses knowledge and then doesn't act on it and still continues to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will definitely hold this person to task. So therefore we always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all of our du'as, right, that we seek Allah's protection min ilmin la yanfa, from knowledge that does not benefit. And we always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for beneficial knowledge for this reason. Right? Because knowledge is not just information. Right? There are many people in the world, right? Many people in the world. There's probably many disbelievers who have more knowledge of Islam than me and you. Right? Because they've made it their PhDs and they studied it, right? And they've specialized in certain fields. Right? There is a great encyclopedia of hadith called Al-Mu'jam al-Mufahras li Alfadh al-Hadith. All you have to do is alphabetically look up any word. It'll tell you how many times that word came in how many hadith books. And it'll give you every single place that it ever came. The book is humongous. The book was written by a disbeliever. A kafir wrote the book, not a Muslim. The person never had hidayah. Right? وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُؤَيِّدُ هَذَا الدِّينَ بِالرَّجُلِ الْفَاجِرِ. Also remember this. Allah will help His religion even if it is at the hands of a disbeliever. Even if it is at the hands of a disobeying person, an evil person. لَا يُؤَيِّدُ هَذَا الدِّينَ بِالرَّجُلِ الْفَاجِرِ. So it doesn't matter that just because this person produced this work does not make this person a noble person. If the person does not have iman, then that person is not a noble person. Again, amazing book. Amazing book. So easy. Anybody can access this book because you're just looking for words alphabetically. It doesn't make it that, it's not that difficult to access a book like this. But the one who wrote this book is not a believer. The person had ma'lumat. They had information, but they never had true ilm. They never had ilm nafi'. They never had ilm that resulted in amal. They never had ilm that guided them. They never had this kind of knowledge. Right? That's why Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala, he always used to say, لَيْسَ الْعِلْمُ بِكَثْرَةِ الرِّوَايَةِ. That true ilm is not having a lot of information. It's not having a vast vocabulary. It's not having a large amount of information, large amount of data in your mind. That's not true ilm. وَإِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ نُورٌ. Because knowledge is light. يَقْذِفُ اللَّهُ فِي قَلْبِ مَنْ شَاءَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows and places in the hearts of whoever He wants from His creation, from His servants. That's true knowledge. If a person's knowledge is increasing them in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that person has knowledge. Otherwise, that person just has information. And information will do you no good. Rather, it will only harm you. Adam alayhi salatu wasalam is given this attribute of ilm, which then results again in his servitude. Adam alayhi salatu wasalam is the first servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from mankind. So Adam alayhi salatu wasalam then begins to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His ilm led him to humility and the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore his ilm was beneficial. Next will come Iblis. Iblis also had ilm. Right? He knew more than the malaika. But his ilm didn't lead him to that humble lifestyle. Did not lead him, right, to being humble and to humilify himself in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that led him to a different end result, right? A different result and conclusion was made for Iblis. Right? But Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, he took that ilm and then he walked down this path of ilm and he developed this humility. Right? And that's what, if ilm increases a person in their amal and humility in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you know that ilm is beneficial. If the more you learn, you continue to find loopholes. The more you learn, you continue to find leeway. Right? Then maybe your ilm is not benefiting you in the way that you think. Right? Maybe it's not benefiting you in the way that you think. Rather, maybe when you had less knowledge, it was better for you. Right? It was better for you then. If a person continues to acquire knowledge and be like, oh, now I know that I can also do this and get away with this in this manner. Right? Now there's no difference between us and Bani Israel. Bani Israel had knowledge. Right? They had knowledge too. Their rabbis were knowledgeable. But what happened? Because they used their knowledge and they found loopholes. Right? They found loopholes. Right? And today Judaism is filled with loopholes. All of the original teachings, they still stand by them, but they're all like watered down, diluted teachings, that they don't really implement the real teachings of Judaism anymore. Even those who consider themselves to be Orthodox Jews, even them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from such knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us ilm nafi', beneficial knowledge, right, that brings about humility and humbleness. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. اللهم لك صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي وإليك مآبي ولك رب تراثي اللهم إني أسألك من خير ما تجيء به الرياح اللهم اجعلني أعظم شكرك وأكثر ذكرك وأتبع نصيحتك وأحفظ وصيتك اللهم إن قلوبنا ونواصينا وجوارحنا بيدك لم تملكنا منها شيئا فإذا فعلت ذلك بهما فكن أنت وليهما واهدنا إلى سواء السبيل. اللهم اجعل حبك أحب الأشياء إلي، واجعل خشيتك أخوف الأشياء عندي، واقطع عني حاجات الدنيا بالشوق إلى لقائك. وإذا أقررت أعين أهل الدنيا من دنياهم فأقرر عيني من عبادتك. اللهم إني أسألك الصحة والعفة والأمانة وحسن الخلق والرضا بالقدر. اللهم لك الحمد شكرا ولك المن فضلا. اللهم إني أسألك التوفيق لمحابك من الأعمال، وصدق التوكل عليك، وحسن الظن بك. اللهم افتح مسامع قلبي لذكرك، وارزقني طاعتك وطاعة رسولك وعملا بكتابك. اللهم إني أخشاك كأني أراك أبدا حتى ألقاك، وأسعدني بتقواك ولا تشقني بمعصيتك. اللهم الطف بي في تيسير كل عسير، فإن تيسير كل عسير عليك يسير، وأسألك اليسر والمعافاة في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم اعف عني فإنك عفو كريم. اللهم طهر قلبي من النفاق، وعملي من الرياء، ولساني من الكذب، وعيني من الخيانة، فإنك تعلم خائنة الأعين وما تخفي الصدور. اللهم ارزقني عينين هطالتين تشفيان القلب بظروف الدموع من خشيتك قبل أن تكون الدموع دما والأضراس جمرا. اللهم عافني في قدرتك، وادخلني في رحمتك، واقضي أجلي في طاعتك، واختم لي بخير عملي، واجعل ثوابه الجنة. اللهم فارج الهم، كاشف الغم، مجيب دعوة المضطرين، رحمن الدنيا والآخرة ورحيمهما. أنت ترحمني فارحمني برحمة تغنيني بها عن رحمة من سواك. اللهم إني أسألك من فجاءة الخير، وأعوذ بك من فجاءة الشر. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام، وإليك يعود السلام. أسألك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام أن تستجيب لنا دعوتنا، وأن تعطينا رغبتنا، وأن تغنينا عمن أغنيته عنا من خلقك. اللهم خر لي واختر لي. اللهم ارضني بقضائك، وبارك لي فيما قدر لي، حتى لا أحب تعجيل ما أخرت ولا تأخير ما عجلت. اللهم لا عيش إلا عيش الآخرة. اللهم أحيني مسكينا وأمتني مسكينا، واحشرني في زمرة المساكين. اللهم اجعلني من الذين إذا أحسنوا استبشروا، وإذا أساءوا استغفروا. اللهم إني أسألك رحمة من عندك تهدي بها قلبي، وتجمع بها أمري، وتلم بها شعثي، وتصلح بها ديني، وتقضي بها ديني، وتحفظ بها غائبي، وترفع بها شاهدي، وتبيض بها وجهي، وتزكي بها عملي، وتلهمني بها رشدي، وترد بها ألفتي، وتعصمني بها من كل سوء. اللهم أعطني إيمانا لا يرتد، ويقينا ليس بعده كفر، ورحمة أنال بها شرف كرامتك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أسألك الفوز في القضاء، ونزل الشهداء، وعيش السعداء، ومرافقة الأنبياء، والنصر على الأعداء، إنك سميع الدعاء. اللهم ما قصر عنه رأيي وضعف عنه عملي، ولم تبلغه نيتي ومسألتي من خير وعدته أحدا من خلقك، أو خير أنت معطيه أحدا من عبادك، فإني أرغب إليك فيه، وأسألك برحمتك رب العالمين. اللهم إني أنزل بك حاجتي، وإن قصر رأيي وضعف عملي افتقرت إلى رحمتك، فأسألك يا قاضي الأمور ويا شافي الصدور، كما تجير بين البحور، أن تجيرني من عذاب السعير، ومن دعوة الثبور، ومن فتنة القبور. اللهم ذا الحبل الشديد والأمر الرشيد، أسألك الأمن يوم الوعيد، والجنة يوم الخلود، مع المقربين الشهود، الركع السجود، الموفين بالعهود. إنك رحيم ودود، وإنك تفعل ما تريد. اللهم اجعلنا هادين مهتدين، غير ضالين ولا مضلين، سلما لأوليائك وحربا على أعدائك. نحب بحبك من أحبك، ونعادي بعداوتك من خالفك من خلقك. اللهم هذا الدعاء وعليك الإجابة، وهذا الجهد وعليك التكلام. اللهم لا تكلني إلى نفسي طرفة عين، ولا تنزع مني صالح ما أعطيتني. اللهم إنك لست بإله استحدثناه، ولا برب يبيد ذكره ابتدعناه، ولا عليك شركاء يقضون معك، ولا كان لنا قبلك من إله نلجأ إليه ونذرك، ولا أعنك على خلقنا أحد فنشركه فيك، تباركت وتعاليت. اللهم خلقت نفسي وأنت توفاها، لك مماتها ومحياها، إن أحييتها فاحفظها، وإن أمتها فاغفر لها. اللهم إني أسألك العافية. اللهم أغنني بالعلم، وزينني بالحلم، وأكرمني بالتقوى وجملني بالعافية. اللهم لا يدركني زمان ولا يدرك زمانا، لا يتبع فيه العليم ولا يستحيا فيه من الحليم. قلوبهم قلوب الأعاجم وألسنتهم ألسنة العرب. اللهم إني أتخذ عندك عهدا لن تخلفنيه، فإنما أنا بشر، فأيما مؤمن آذيته أو شتمته أو جلدته أو لعنته فاجعلها له صلاة وزكاة وقربة تقربها بها إليك يوم القيامة. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من البرص ومن الشقاق والنفاق وسوء الأخلاق ومن شر ما تعلم. أعوذ بالله من حال أهل النار ومن النار وما قرب إليها من قول أو عمل، ومن شر ما أنت آخذ بناصيته، وأعوذ بك من شر ما في هذا اليوم وشر ما بعده، ومن شر نفسي وشر الشيطان وشركه، وأن نقترف على أنفسنا سوءا أو نجره إلى مسلم، أو أكتسب خطيئة أو ذنبا لا تغفره، ومن ضيق المقام يوم القيامة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله لا إله إلا